Hello, hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. We're back again with another stream. Okay, let me open a very specific link here. Okay, almost there. It's loading. It's taking forever. All right, hell yeah. All right, hopefully my brain won't explode by the end of this stream, because I've been effectively working for like 7 hours, or no. I've been working since 11 a.m., so it's like 8 hours straight, and we're going for another 2, so today is definitely an overtime. I didn't even like break for lunch. I'm dying. Is this the end? Okay, give me just a second. I'm going to make a cute little TikTok to advertise that I'm live over here. I will be right back. Don't mind me. Atari's going dark. Alright, recording stuff sucks. I'm just going to wait for a little bit longer and see if anybody else pops in. Hopefully we'll get some people in here. We'll see how this goes. I need to edit the cover of this because, by God, this video is terrifying. Oh my God. The image last week did not do super good, so we're going to see if a video does good this time. We'll figure it out. Alright, once the 10-minute mark hits, I'm going to go ahead and just start reading, but we're going to wait to see if anybody pops in. Last week was really quiet, so it is understandable if nobody jumps in on here. That is okay. Sometimes that is the way that it goes, but at least the VOD will be alive. My videos talking about my characters do super poorly on all social media platforms. That's okay. Selling books is hard. Rip. Oh gosh, I'm super tired. All right. Almost there. I'm very stoked. I'm stoked to be able to read this book. We're gonna make it happen. I wonder how the sprayed edges printer works. I want to know this printer's secrets. I want to understand, you know. I'm looking at my own construction of my book and I'm like, how does this work? What did they do to make this magic? Okay, let me go ahead and I'm also going to see if I can sub to my friend. Won't let me do it. They won't let me do it until it expires. It's so annoying. I want to use my Prime sub, but they said no. All right, we're effectively to the 2-minute or 10-minute mark, waiting for people to come in. Nobody is here, so I'm just going to start the spiel, and we're just going to start reading, so that way people who are enjoying the VOD can get in on this. So, welcome in. If you're jumping into the VOD for the first time and you don't know what this is, you are a part of a live reading. I'm going to be working on reading from my book, Court of Snakes. This is the omnibus, but I'm going to be reading specifically from Court of Snakes, Bitter Truth, Honeyed Justice, which is the second book in my Court of Snakes duology. So there it is. Very exciting. This book contains both books, which is very fun. And this book comes out on the 28th of May on BackerKit. So if you want to back the book, you can do so by clicking the link in the description below and sign up to be notified when this bad boy launches. It's a special edition. It's got foil. It's got a little dangly bit down here. It's got sprayed edges. It's got end caps. It's got illustrations. It's got everything. It's got everything. So you should totally check it out and back the thing. If you are interested in doing so, you can, of course, go and sign up using the link below, or you can back the thing early. It's already 30% funded, and it hasn't even launched yet. So if you want to back it early, be one of the very first people to do so, you can. And most importantly, you get, right now, there's a 10% off, or $10 off. It's about 20%-ish off, give or take, of the Early Bird Omnibus. There's only 9 copies of this remaining. So if you want it, you need to jump on it. But for those of you who did not get to the stream last time, the TLDR of this book is that Taryn and Parissa, 2 teens living in an abandoned city, have now discovered that their city is not so isolated and that there are actually other humans on the outside. Rebellion is brewing. The people are getting very antsy. It's effectively like a bunch of rats trapped inside a box, and they are not very excited about it. There's tarot card magic. There's lots of themes of classism, racism, and rebellion. And this is a YA political dystopian fantasy, so it is for kids ages 13 to 18, but I'm sure adults will love it as well. The first book was funded at 120% on Kickstarter, so I hope to do the same thing here and really just bump this thing up. So we're about halfway through. If you want to listen to the first half of the book, all of the VODs are available on YouTube in the live section, and you should totally go check it out because you can listen to the whole book for free. They'll be available there until the second week of June, and then I will go back and delete all the VODs. So get it while you still can. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and start reading, and we'll go until we're about 3/4 of the way through. We're about 2 hours in. Here we go. Collapse. Taryn, Na'a, October of the first year. Taryn craned his neck upward as he watched a store collapse in front of his eyes, the flames that had started somewhere at its base consuming the entire adobe structure. He had decided to stay with Ami for just a few days, that was all. Just a few to understand the world outside and try to get a better grip on what lay ahead. Very clearly that had been a mistake. A unit of guards ran by him, rifles primed, dashing further into the city and toward the innermost part of Na'a. Citizens coughed up black smoke and fled toward Atza as the buildings around them burned. The fires must have been going for a while for them to completely overtake even the stucco buildings. Someone had planned this. "What do we do?" Ami screamed out over the flames, dancing embers burning their cheeks. "This is really bad, man." "I don't know what happened." Terran covered his eyes from the smoke. "I need to make sure the council members are okay. Go back to the door we came through and wait there. I'll come for you." "No, wait, dude, I'm gonna get lost. I don't know this place like you do." The roar of wood snapping and falling preceded a plume of smoke, hot air, and ash as another building fell near the two, knocking Ami back to a nearby stall. Terran grabbed Ami by the arm and darted forward, covering his eyes from embers and heat, toward the palace. All his training under the king paid off, and Ami could hardly keep up, though they did, their long legs jumping over fallen debris and bodies. People had been trampled or suffocated in the smoke, and the fire seemed to only affect Na'a, for now. As he approached the palace, Terran found that the fire had not yet spread there. Elite guards readied water pumps prepared to put out the blaze, and came with explosives to put out the fire, and came with explosives to take down buildings to keep the blaze from jumping from structure to structure. They set up their detonators outside the greenhouse and courtyard to keep the palace intact, and Terran paused for a moment to observe them, making sure they were doing what they needed to when someone slammed into him. He caught himself before he tumbled entirely to the ground, and Ami steadied him as they both looked around to see what had happened. Esmond scrambled to his feet, madness in his eyes, and he gripped Terran by the shoulders. "Terran," he shouted, "where's Parissa? I can't find her." Esmond, calm down." Terran steadied Esmond with a strong arm and looked around. "I'm sure she's fine. Is everyone in the shelter inside?" "Yes, the other council members have shelter, just as Perseus asked. Parissa said she was leaving this morning to continue investigating the outside and didn't come back." "I'm sure she's fine. What's the status?" "I was hoping you would tell me. Perseus has dispatched his men to put out the fire. A riot broke out as far as he's able to gather. In Na'a. Apparently, they think you're a fraud and that you've loaded the council, so they decided to burn the entire place to the ground." "Are you kidding me?" Terran huffed and looked into the city, down a smoldering street. "I've got to find Parissa. We're stronger together. Without her, they outnumber us in the council. Ami, stay here with Esmond." "No, wait, bro, I'm going with you." Ami raised their chin in defiance. "I can keep up. I want to find her too." Terran shook his head. "There's a chance you could die. The whole district's on fire. I want to help you guys. You don't deserve to be trapped like sardines in a can here. We can make sure your friend is safe, and I can testify with my tablet in front of everyone. That was the plan, right?" "Right. And you can't testify if you're dead. Stay here." Terran turned back toward the greenhouse gate and dashed beyond it, pulling his cards from his pocket. Everything around him melted away. Suddenly his feet carried him in a familiar way that they had not in months. They ran of their own accord, tearing around corners, trained and ready to run. He pulled a card without even looking and slammed it onto the back of his hand. The metal uncoiled from the card and wrapped its way around his palm, the familiar gauntlet forming, and then the magic hit. The world around him slowed to a crawling pace. He moved faster than he could have ever dreamed, and like a bolt of lightning he streaked through the city. Where could Parissa have gone? He thought back to the last couple of days and attempted to put himself in her shoes. If he was her, what would he have done? She already knew that he was outside the city gathering information there. He flew to the Atza district and into the tavern where a few of the king's old patrons still kept up the place, and when he stopped he took a moment to catch his breath. "Has anyone seen Parissa?" The few people in the room looked at each other and shrugged, but one stood. "I saw Kelek earlier. He said that someone had spotted her at the cathedral." What had Kelek been doing in the king's tavern? Terran did not have time to think of it now. He dashed back to the front door, out the front door, the wind carrying him to the cathedral with hopes that he would catch Parissa there. That side of Na'a had not caught fire, and a group of the disciples of the Creed stood outside the building watching the blaze go up on the other side of the district. More guards rushed past. "Keep going, men," one shouted. "We're to detonate buildings on Market Street to keep the fire from progressing any further." "Well, damn," someone gazing at the blaze on the street muttered. "I guess it was bound to happen eventually." The cold metal unwrapped itself from Terran's skin, and he turned around to find Kellis standing there, a splotch of white among the red robes of the Creed, and when they met eyes, a smile played at the corner of his lips. Ah, look who it is. Have you seen Parissa? Taryn demanded. I don't work for you. As a council member, I'm demanding you answer my question. Another council member's safety is at risk. You just missed her. I came to pay the widow a visit and get some information, and I saw her running toward the fire. Which way? Kellic pointed in a general direction, and Taryn took off, having to run off his own energy again now that the card had abandoned him. Eventually, he reached the edge of the flames' rampage, clusters of citizens and guards attempting to put the fire out, but then a bolt of flaming alcohol flew over Taryn's head, or a bottle of flaming alcohol flew over Taryn's head and hit the window of a store behind him, shattering through the glass and setting the interior of the establishment on fire. He scrambled for another card, hoping to remedy the situation, and when the magic had finished taking hold, he glanced down at his own hands to find a familiar sensation, that of dripping lava and metal. His fingertips cracked, and a molten fire coursed through his veins where blood had once been. It had been a long time since he had drawn that card. That card had been the very first he had ever placed on his skin. The devil. He rushed into the building, hoping to put out the flame before it consumed everything, and placed his hand upon the ground where the fire spread. The flames licked his molten body, and he moved through the heat unburnt. The fire pulled into his fingertips like inhaling fresh summer air, and all the fuel the flames had been using to continue to burn drew into Taryn's body. He ate the flame up like honey, and soon the building had put itself out. As soon as one disaster was done, he rushed outside to find more. He was sure he looked terrifying. The last person who had seen him like that had nearly pissed his armor, but he would rather be terrifying than in danger. He scoured the street ahead of him to figure out where the bombardment had come from. Metal clashed against metal as citizens donned in custom armor crossed blades with Perseus's guard, and Taryn froze there, confused. They were fighting each other. A building nearby blew sky high as the guard demolished it to create a fire break, and Taryn stepped forward. Don't be afraid, Taryn began. It's Councilman Lahal. What's the status of everything that's going on? The guard froze as if he had looked directly into his darkest nightmares, but regained himself after a moment of panic. Councilman, status not good. Riots broke out this morning deep in Na'a. Apparently, people have been preparing for some time to tear the whole place down. An armed militia of mostly Na'a residents set half the district on fire and now are putting up barricades with patrols. We can't get in, and we've been trying to put this fire out for hours. Where's your break line? Councilman Sobter is already on it. She ran by not long ago and said that she was going to carve out a large line. If you want to head her way, she was going to take care of Central Row. Thank you. Keep up the hard work. With igneous steps leaving melted cobblestone in his wake, Taryn tore down the street again toward the break line. When he arrived, he found Parissa there, her hands outstretched in front of her. In one precise blast, an intense beam of heat and light shot from her fingertips and destroyed the building she faced. When he stepped to her side, she jumped, but soon pointed to other structures as she realized he was not a threat. Taryn, good, quick! I'm out. They're taking out this entire street from Heart to Starfall to make sure the fire can't go any further. Can you burn them down? Without hesitation, Taryn got to work. The two of them laid waste to as many buildings as they could, and as soon as the task was done, they met in the middle, cardless and without magic, as the fire ceased to proceed further. Parissa took a few deep breaths, wiping sweat from her brow, as they looked at the line of destruction. I can't believe this actually happened. I'm just glad you're safe. Esmond had a fit. Taryn rubbed soot from his eyes and looked toward the blaze, which still roared, but at least had slowed. The guards will be able to put it out. At least it happened here. If this had been Zaya, the entire district would have gone up like tinder. I just want to know why. Alright, I'm going to take a second to eat a little bit of soup. Don't mind me, I'm going to take a couple bites of soup. Eat some dinner. Soup is good. This is how we live forever, is via soup. I got broccoli cheese soup. I'm fine. Okay. A few more bites of soup. Man, the broccoli? Okay. Hot take, though. I got Panera broccoli cheese soup from Target. Can you explain to me why the broccoli pieces are so big and luscious in this soup? And then when you get it in store, it's like the saddest soup you've ever had in your whole life. Alright, the unknown. Parissa, Na'a, November of the first year. Parissa passed her hand over her face, over skin that was not hers, as someone bumped her shoulder. Everyone held their breath as Councilman Shraga took to a podium, flanked by 2 armed militiamen with the colors of Na'a on their uniforms and their armor shining in the sun. She had no idea who they possibly could have paid to get such nice armor, but it rivaled that of even the elite guard. She absentmindedly itched the spot on the back of her hand that the card had sunken into, just the barest hint of a mark there. The magician. Terran, for his own safety, had decided it would be better to hole himself up in the palace with Ami, but Parissa refused. Something was going on, and she wanted to get to the bottom of it. Shraga adjusted the papers on the podium and cleared their throat, taking a moment to look across the crowd. Parissa held her breath. For whatever reason, she felt as though they could see right through her disguise, but she knew this could not be true. If Terran could be disguised right in front of her nose, then the magician would get her through one speech. Esteemed citizens, today I stand before you with a heavy heart and a resolute determination to address a situation that demands our immediate attention. I see you, I hear you. Our beloved city, a beacon of unity in the face of destruction, faces a challenge unlike any other. I appreciate that you have welcomed me into your autonomous zone. I understand that you do not want the council to meddle in your affairs. You have spoken up, and you have decided to take matters into your own hands. Parissa could not believe that she had simply walked into the occupation zone wearing such a simple disguise, just the magician and a new set of clothes. The people of Na'a had holed themselves up in that area, refusing to let anyone in or out. Even some members of the guard had abandoned their posts and joined forces with the insurrectionists. Shraga pushed an errant piece of hair from their face and pointed to the wall. Let me be clear from the outset. Fear may be a natural response to the unknown, but it cannot be the guiding force that shapes our decisions and actions. Our strength lies in our unity, in our ability to face challenges head-on, together as one community. We must not let fear and distrust divide us. Instead, we must embrace each other, support one another, and find common ground to tackle the obstacles before us. Parissa felt someone else stumble into her, the entire crowd moving and shifting to accommodate far too many people in too little space. When she turned to see who had stepped into her, she found Esmond there. She froze. He was supposed to be sheltering in place inside the palace. What business did he have in such a dangerous place? In the face of uncertainty, our instinct may be to retreat, to build walls both literal and figurative, and seek refuge in isolation. We already have strong walls, the walls of Segeno around us. We must stand together, not apart. Together we can overcome obstacles that seem insurmountable. If we can survive the Great War, we can survive this. Esmond passed his hand over the beginning of a beard that covered his face, and his eyes darted frantically around the crowd. Na'a had never been his district, but when a few people whistled in response to Shraga's words, he tensed. This was not even Shraga's district, so why did they have such a vested interest in keeping the people of Na'a inside the city? Now, Parissa could understand why someone like Blackwell and his wife would be invested in keeping people inside. They had security inside, all their businesses had made money inside, and without the infrastructure of Segeno to support them, the entire thing fell apart. They would lose everything, but Atza had been shrinking for years. People like Talbot made sure of that. Atza slowly faded away, while Zaya, like rot, overtook it. Now, addressing the concern of monsters beyond our city walls, let me say this. I understand that fear can be powerful. Someone leaked our documents, I know. I know that you all know what we found outside. Parissa's lips pressed tightly together. She had not been privy to that information. How long had that leak been out? If we stand together, we don't have to face the unknown. We are strong. We have proven that time and time again. I respect your desire to isolate, and as a councilman, I will respect your request for autonomy. I vow to represent you and make sure your voice is heard on the council no matter the cost. There it was. That was why Shraga was doing what they were doing. If they could become the poster person for this newly formed sub-district, the new Na'a, they could potentially jockey for a leadership role there. Parissa shook her head. People really would do anything for a moment in the spotlight. As if being a council representative for Atsa was not enough. My ultimate priority is to find out the truth. I will make sure to investigate every single conspiracy. We will find out who our leaders are, no masks, no occult practices, and what kinds of threats lie beyond the walls. An insurrection will only exacerbate our challenges and inflict harm on our city's unity, so I give you full permission, as it is your right, to take care of yourselves. All I ask is that you keep the peace. No violence. Violence begets violence, and it is not the path we should tread. Esmond scoffed next to Parissa, and a smile played at the corner of her mouth. At least she knew for certain that someone was on her side. I call upon the leaders of the occupation zone to join me to negotiate with the council. Let us engage in constructive dialogue and find ways to protect our city without compromising our unity. Together we can address the concerns of safety and security while respecting the rights and aspirations of all our citizens. Or the rights and aspirations of all the richest business owners in Na'a who are afraid of losing their legacy fortunes if it turns out that, in the grand scheme of the world outside, that they are not important. Parissa balled her hand into a fist. Thank you, and may the spirit of unity guide us in our quest for a better tomorrow. Shraga gathered up their papers, and the people in the surprisingly large crowd clapped, whistling. The councilman stepped off to the side and was approached by a few wealthy-looking Na'a representatives who seemed eager to talk. This is it, Parissa thought. This is the beginning of the end. Hold on. All right. Esmond stepped away from her side and back into the crowd, and before he could get too far away from her, Parissa hustled to follow. She needed to talk to him. They wandered out of the occupation zone past the large makeshift barricades that had been built to keep the riffraff out of New Na'a, as the paint on the walls at the perimeter called it, and into the rest of the city. City guards stood at the border, rifles primed nose to nose with the Na'a militia. At the drop of a hat, a bloodbath was bound to break out. As soon as the two of them were far enough away from the barricades, Parissa reached out and touched Esmond on the elbow, hoping to not to startle him. Master Esmond. Esmond jumped regardless and turned to find a stranger there. He straightened out his tunic, face pale as though he had been caught carrying out a murder. He raised an eyebrow and smiled his best council member's smile. Can I help you? It's Parissa. Parissa attempted to dispel her card by shaking her hand, as she had seen Terran do so many times before, but she could never quite get the hang of it. The card persisted, and she shook her head. You're spying on Shraga too? Let's speak elsewhere. Parissa took him by the arm, and they wandered silent through Na'a and into Atsa, where she walked him to a place where she knew no one would be listening. The King's Tavern had been considerably emptier since his passing, and only a few members of his original group hung around, keeping the place humming. One of the members of Terran's expedition group, a mercenary with fiery red hair, lingered in the corner and raised a curious eyebrow when Parissa and Esmond sat down. Do you want something to drink? Parissa offered. I'll pay. You don't have to, my dear. Esmond started. I'll get it. Hang tight. Parissa ordered 2 hot teas with liquor. She knew she needed it, and as she waited for her drinks to be prepared, she pulled money from her pocket. Her own hands gripped the coins, and she wondered whether the card had worn off before she entered the tavern or after. The barkeep smiled, and the mugs warmed Parissa's hands as she returned to her teacher. Ginger tea, was all she said. And Basil, you know me well. Esmond took one sip of the drink, and his face puckered. Oh, and mescal. It'll warm you up. Parissa took a sip of hers and looked toward the door. Something made her uneasy, and the same feeling she had inside the cathedral crept up her spine. She felt eyes on her, like everyone in the tavern watched her. So how much money do you have on the table? For what? I'm betting this whole thing is going to implode on itself, and it'll only take weeks to do it. This whole thing's a disaster. All right, I'm going to take a brief break for just a second and let the ad play over on Twitch. Of course, if you have any questions in the chat, please let me know. I'm going to eat this soup and no one can stop me. Num num num. Bread is good. Bread and soup. Alright, we're almost there. Okay. This whole thing's a disaster. The occupation zone is certainly not a good sign. At the very least, what it shows is that the unrest has begun, and unless the people of Na'a are satiated, it will only continue to get worse. They're going to hold on to what they have with a tight fist. The poor have nothing to lose, and I'm sure if they were offered a better chance outside, they would take it in a heartbeat. I'm not so certain that's a good idea. No? Prissa's fingers tightened around her mug. Esmond let out a heavy sigh and took a large gulp of his drink, his face flushing a little from the heat of it. Parissa could not tell if it was because he had been so pale before from being startled or if the warmth of the mescal had done its job. I just don't think the people of Sageno can handle it, frankly. I think that's really their decision. And I respect that, but I also understand that particularly for the people of my district, most of them don't have an education. For a lot of them, even the basic goings-on of the government can be difficult to grasp simply because of that. I don't imagine it would be possible to hand them a device like the one Ami brought in and not kill at least a few of the elderly from fright. But we should at least give them the chance. I suppose I'm not saying that the people of Sageno, if what Ami says is true, are going to be forced out onto the street against their will. They would have that choice. Esmond nodded slowly and looked into his mug, watching the basil wilt as it floated there. I'm getting too old for this. You're not that old. Esmond took one of Parissa's hands in his and gave her a half-hearted smile. You know as well as I do that I've lost too much playing this game. I originally did this so that I could save lives, help people, and after all this time I've done next to nothing. I'm almost wondering if it's time for me to hang up my hat and let someone else do it. Just give me time, Esmond. That's all Taryn and I are asking for. We just need time. Data. Taryn, the palace, November of the first year. I'm dying! Ami chuckled to themselves while they looked over the machinery before them. Trackball mice weren't even a thing when I was born. This computer must be ancient. I have no idea what you just said. Taryn batted a mote of dust away from his face as Ami blew decades of grime off the thing that they called a computer. Taryn had taken them down into the service tunnel that Parissa and Perseus had discovered with the hope that they might be able to shed some light on the information in the machine. What's the passcode? Ami waited patiently with their fingers on the keys. 1776. Cringe. Ami punched the numbers with lightning speed and the machine came to life again. When the screen lit up, Ami grinned. I can't believe this thing still works. This is a miracle. That old? Not that old, but old enough to be considered a relic. Unfortunately, this thing isn't connected to the internet. It's too old for that, I think. Or, alternatively, this place was intentionally designed to not connect to the internet. That way no one could get information in or out. Taryn looked over the menu on the screen and tilted his head to the side. Well, let's get reading. What's this? Ami rolled the ball on the computer to move a cursor over top a folder. When they tried to push another button to open it, a window appeared asking for another passcode. Ooh, an encrypted file. What does that mean? It means someone really didn't want anyone to get into this file that's labeled authorized personnel only. It makes me super curious. Any idea what the password is? It's not the same as the other number we put in? No, this one looks like it's much longer. Taryn placed his hand over his mouth in thought. The chances of them guessing the correct password were slim to none, but the more information that they could get, the better. I have a really stupid idea, but it might work. And that stupid idea is? Taryn drew a card, and while he could not use it as it was not his suit, he looked for the meaning in it regardless. Plan very carefully, kid. Lexus's voice rang in his head. Don't assume everything will work out as you expect it to, but don't be afraid to ask for help. You said you found what underneath the palace? Blackwell tapped his foot impatiently as the two of them rode an elevator down to the ground floor. A secret room with what Ami calls a computer in it. This It's this big machine that has a bunch of written documents stored in it. It's like a file, but you can store much more inside it. You know what? I don't really understand it myself. You're just going to have to see it. The elevator doors opened and Blackwell strode behind Taryn with purpose in his step. And you did not inform the council of this. Why? To be honest, I don't trust any of them. I don't even really trust you. That's the wisest decision you could have possibly made. At least you're honest. You better not betray me. I will make it your problem. Is that a threat? Only if you make it one. The two of them stepped through the war room and into the service tunnel. This is a horrendously creepy hallway. It apparently leads to the water silos, but it also leads to... Taryn gestured down the tunnel and into the room where Ami waited, tapping their finger to their chin in contemplation. Taryn put his hands on his hips. To this. Blackwell's mouth dropped open a little bit as he looked around the room. This is incredible. The problem is we need a password. Taryn motioned to the screen. Perseus and Parissa discovered a document on here explaining that there was some kind of experiment that Christian LaHale was putting on. Sagano has something to do with it, and I need to get to the bottom of it. My thinking is that if we can figure out what was really going on when the city was founded, we can encourage people to get outside of the city. Councilman Blackwell said nothing for a moment and looked around the room, calculating. His eyes fell on Taryn's face, and he raised his chin a little. And you're sure this is the right decision? What do you mean? You have two choices right now, Lahal. You could, on the one hand, give the people this information. It will break them. Shatter their reality. Most likely, the truth might also break you too. It has the tendency to do that, but you'll be free. On the other hand, we can try and work together to repair the city in the best way that we can. Fix what we know. There's no more room in the city, you know that. It's falling apart at the seams. People were at each other's throats long before my parents died trying to fix it, and I think we are past the point of no return on that one. After a moment, Blackwell nodded. If that is your choice, then so be it. Let's get this password. Oh, I wish Parissa were here. She might be able to pull some information from her cups. You have the cards as well, Blackwell suggested. Have you tried? It's just not in my suit. Wands isn't really for that. You're the expert here, not me. Blackwell looked more closely at the screen. Do we know what's in the folder, or at least have any idea? Ami shrugged. It's just labeled as private information? But whose private information? Good question. Ami used the ball to navigate to a separate menu and began digging through files that Taryn did not understand. When they finally seemed to find something that they wanted, a cheeky grin spilled across their face. Apparently someone with the last name Macaulay. How do you know? Taryn leaned over Ami's shoulder, hoping to learn something about the technology. This folder has a name on it. See, you can see Administrator and then Macaulay there. I know that name, Blackwell interjected. Macaulay was the name of one of the lead engineers that designed Sagano. Taryn pulled on his lip with his teeth as he ran through potential passwords. There are too many possibilities. We'll be here forever. You seem hesitant. You're lacking confidence in your own abilities. I watched you hold up a building, Lahal. Draw a card. Taryn's eyebrows furrowed as he looked at Blackwell, trying to understand why he would even care. He pulled a card from his pocket and shook his head. This doesn't help me. Hi, Raimundo. How you doing? Welcome in. My name's Tycho, and I'm reading from my brand new young adult dystopian fantasy book, Court of Snakes, Bitter Truth, Honey Justice. So feel free to sit back, relax, and if you have any questions about the book, let me know. What is it? 9 of Wands. If I were in combat, this would maybe be useful, but not in this situation. What does it mean? Is there any other meaning other than what it does? Well, in a traditional sense, I suppose 9 of Wands is a card of encouragement. It means you have to have what it takes to finish, or to get to the finish line, I guess. Don't give up, keep pushing. Blackwell nodded. So trust your gut. Just use it. You don't get it. Wands and swords are combat suits. Pentacles and cups are knowledge suits. So unless I'm going to hit the computer, shut up and use it. Taryn shook his head and placed the card on his skin, feeling the cool of the metal unwrap, almost as if the gauntlet were holding his hand, guiding him. The numeral 9 and the same logo that had been etched into the back of his neck by his significator card sunk into his skin, and the air crackled around him, though no staves appeared as he had expected. The room silenced to an unnerving degree, and when Taryn looked at Ami, he found they held their breath. Taryn approached the keyboard and closed his eyes. He just needed to trust his gut. He punched the old way into the box and hit the enter key. The window rattled back and forth, and the text cleared. "Wrong password," Ami whispered. "Try again," Blackwell encouraged. Taryn felt with every fiber of his being that the password must have something to do with that damned book. Perhaps a variation of the phrase would do it. Ancient Approach was his second try, though that yielded the same results. "Hey, not to put any pressure on the situation or anything, but if you put in the wrong password again, it'll lock us out, potentially forever." Ami tapped their heel and pointed to the screen. "No pressure." Taryn took one final deep breath and let his hand move on its own. His left hand typed "Perpetual Promise," and he hit the enter key once more. Instead of rattling, the window simply disappeared, and Ami cried out, "You did it!" Whew, they probably should have included, numbers or something, or at least an exclamation point. Good work. Blackwell leaned onto the box next to the computer, and the three of them opened the folder. Taryn shuddered as his card returned itself to the deck, and he chewed on his tongue as he watched the computer screen. The Wands card should not have had that in its power, so either he had discovered something new, or the books he had read were wrong. And the worst part of it all was that he had no one to ask. It was not as if Lexus could provide any insight. He was alone. The cards had surpassed his expectations, and every day the mystery of them was harder to ignore, but at least they had broken open the folder. Inside, several documents formed a list, and they spent a few moments reading down the line. "These are all invoices," Blackwell explained, "for services. Must be from LaHale to Macaulay for construction projects." Taryn scoured the list for something useful. And then he found it. "What's that?" Ami asked at almost the same time. "Let's take a look." Taryn opened a file titled Correspondence Backups _ scans 1999.pdf and began to scroll through it. Abraham Macaulay, G5, 7/20/1960. Christian LaHale, 900 East Altadena Drive, Altadena, California, 91001. Dear Mr. LaHale, I hope this letter finds you well. I am thrilled to inform you that after weeks of negotiations and strategizing, I have successfully secured the contract for the requested space in the Black Rock Desert for your ambitious social experiment site. The bureaucratic maze was no easy feat to navigate, but after a considerable amount of effort, I managed to file Sageno as a self-governing zone. It'll be just like Disneyland, the happiest place on Earth, I assume. I deeply appreciate your kind invitation to join the experiment, but I believe my talents are best utilized ensuring its success from the outside. Being a part of the team responsible for constructing such an innovative city with its nearly impenetrable walls is an honor. I sincerely hope you find peace and get away from all the toxic nonsense this country is bringing in. Just you watch. Our economy is going to be in the trash, but Sageno will be thriving if your theory is right. I'm genuinely excited about the prospect of updating the city's infrastructure and security measures as time goes on from the outside. The potential of this experiment is awe-inspiring, and I am eager to see how it unfolds. I must emphasize that the team operating security and monitoring Sageno has no knowledge of the true intentions behind the city. They simply believe it is a federal warehouse lot, nothing more. This necessary secrecy ensures that the experiment's smooth functioning as requested. No interference. I cannot express enough how proud I am to be a part of this endeavor. I have dedicated my career to advancing the social health of the United States, and Sageno represents an extraordinary opportunity to push the boundaries of what is possible. Finally, I wish you best of luck on the inside as you explore uncharted territory. I am confident that with your vision and passion, Sageno will thrive beyond expectations. Thank you once again for considering me for this remarkable project. If you ever require any assistance or updates from the outside, please don't hesitate to reach out through our securely established channels. Wishing you all the success in the world, S.A. Abraham Macaulay. The three of them must have read over the letter at least a dozen times, and Blackwell took a deep breath after a while, putting his hands in his pockets. We're screwed. All right, well, I'll take a brief break to reintroduce my book since I have a guest in stream. So again, my name's Tycho, and I'm reading through my brand new book, Court of Snakes, Bitter Truth, Honey Justice. This is the omnibus edition that's coming out on May 28th this year. Very exciting. It's a young adult political dystopian fantasy featuring tarot card magic. Thank you so much for the follow, Raimundo. That was very nice. But yeah, you can read samples of this on my website online if you want to check it out. I do have the website here, so feel free to take a look. If you like books like The Hunger Games or tarot card magic in general, tarot card is a divination tool, those kinds of things. This special edition is also crazy because it's the first book I've ever published that actually has like my illustrations inside as well. So I'm just like uber stoked. This thing is very amazing. So if you're looking for a new book to read, feel free to check out my website. And not to be too crazy here, but you could also back the book as well. This is Backer Kit. It functions very similarly to Kickstarter. If you back the book, your card will not be charged until June 30th. But if you do like it and you want to get this book, I have some early bird rewards for people who are backing it early. But thank you so much for joining the crew. I do a lot of writing and reading on stream. Tomorrow is my writing day. Ooh, I have a shit ton of books on books and tarot decks, so right up my alley. That's so awesome. Now, this book I ended up writing, every time a character uses a tarot card, I just drew a random card from this deck, actually. I had this little baby Barnes & Noble deck that I got when I was like 15, and I've been reading tarot ever since. So the whole book is completely random. I operated off of like no take backsies, so once a card was drawn, like that was it. And I had to just kind of roll with the punches there and see what the book would do. So it was a really fun process. But yeah, feel free to check everything out, and yeah, I appreciate you hanging out. So enjoy the rest of the book. I'll take occasional breaks if we run into ads, but other than that, I'm mostly just going to be hanging and reading. Trial, Parissa, the Palace, November of the first year. This is absolutely absurd, Parissa shouted. She had not meant to take out her rage on Esmond, as she knew it was not his fault, but everything was happening too quickly. Perseus put a calming hand on her shoulder, but that only made her angrier. Parissa, it's fine. We can take whatever they want to throw at us. He attempted to stand firm, but the slight wobble in his voice gave him away. But we shouldn't have to. We have a million other more important things to worry about, and this is the last thing that they needed to bring up. It's a huge waste of time. Either way, we need to maintain decorum, my dear. Esmond stammered, his eyes darting everywhere but Parissa's face. It will be our duty as council members to make a just and balanced decision regardless of what happens. There has to be a reason this is happening now. This isn't a coincidence. Maybe not, Perseus agreed, but either way we have to deal with it now. The door to the throne room opened merely a crack, and the three of them turned their heads to find Maze there, pale as a sheet. Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. The hearing is about to begin, so if you could please take your seats. Right away. Esmond rested his hand on Parissa's arm. Come on, we have a jury to convince. Maze opened the door fully, and the three of them joined the rest of the council members at the front of the throne room, where a long row of tables had been set up. As Parissa sat, she locked eyes with Taryn, who sat across from her rather than beside her. Next to him, a Na'a lawyer who she had never seen looked over notes. Taryn smiled weakly at her. He looked terrified. The entire room crowded with people, and spectators from all districts stood on tiptoe and smashed up against each other to get a glimpse at the disaster that was about to unfold. A group of 12 others sat apart from the crowd, the jury, and they waited just as nervously as everyone else. When all council members were settled, Shraga stood and stepped to a podium. Thank you all for coming. As chairperson of the judicial branch of Segeno, I stand before you to preside over the case of Segeno versus Taryn Lahal. We will officially hold this case today, the 14th of November, year 93 of the new era. Will the prosecution please make their opening statement? Parissa's eyes shifted to the person in question, someone by the name of Newman she had never met, as his name card read. The man stood, adjusting his very expensive-looking Na'a-tailored suit, and straightened his papers. Thank you, Councilman Shraga. People of the jury, we are here today because the defendant, Mr. Taryn Lahal, a public servant and former sovereign of Segeno, has been accused of not being who he claims to be. Evidence and testimonies will reveal that Mr. Lahal is an imposter who has manipulated his way into the seat of a respected politician. Objection, Councilman. The woman who sat next to Taryn raised her hand. The defense, Parissa presumed. She only barely recalled the information that Esmond had tried to cram into her head during her studies about the Segeno legal system. This is a trial, not a conviction. My apologies, Councilman. Newman amended. We will provide compelling evidence that will question Mr. Lahal's true identity, that is all. What evidence? Parissa looked to her left to see how Perseus had reacted to the entire thing, and he maintained a stone countenance as he always had in the face of danger. Thank you, Prosecutor Newman. Councilman Shraga's voice carried around the room as they spoke. Every single person in the room held their breath. Defense, your opening statement, please. Esteemed people of the jury, the defense attorney said as she stood, my client, Mr. Taran Lahal, is a dedicated public servant. He has been nothing but loyal to the city of Sageno since his birth. Despite all odds, and even though he had to bear witness to his own parents' execution by an actual usurper, he chose to do the right thing and protect our government and constitution that this city was founded on. He's been targeted with baseless accusations designed to tarnish his reputation. We will prove that these accusations wrong and uphold Councilman Lahal's honor. Thank you. I'd like to call forward my first witness. Mr. Newman stood again as an elderly woman wandered her way to the podium. She looked ancient, and Parissa recognized her. She had seen her around the palace at least a few times. Mrs. King, would you please come to the stand? The elderly woman wobbled her way behind the podium, smoothing her skirt as she did so. Mrs. King, can you describe your relationship with Councilman Lahal? I was a nanny for him for his early years before his parents were killed, she explained. Taran's eyes seemed filled with nothing but betrayal. Parissa could not imagine how much it hurt to have someone that she was sure that he remembered fondly testifying against him. And comparing that time to now, Mr. Newman began to pace. Would you say that Councilman Lahal has changed at all? Well, I frankly don't trust anything to do with the king, Lexus. Mrs. King shook her head. I've been working at the palace a long time, and as a councilman, Lexus caused more problems than he fixed. It would not surprise me if his only goal was to alter the council as much as he could, even if not directly. Taran was always such an obedient child and bloody brilliant. So smart. Frankly, a lot of the radical ideas that I hear coming out of Mr. Lahal's mouth don't match what I know to be Taran Lahal at all. Different how? Well, not only does he look a little different from how I remember him as a child, mind you, I was there the day he ran away from the palace and the day he came back, but even his mannerisms of speech are different. Something doesn't sit right with me. Parissa clenched her fist on the table. How could she possibly say something like that? She didn't see him for 3 years and then was surprised he changed. He grew up. We both did. Thank you, Mrs. King. No further questions? Mr. Newman sat down, a smug grin on his face as if he had already won the case. Defense, you are free to question the witness. Shraga too had a little bit of a lilt to their voice. Parissa scoffed. They had organized this entire thing, she was sure. I have questions for you, Mrs. King. Taran's attorney stood and approached the stand. Mrs. King, how long were you a nanny for Councilman Lahal? From the time that he was 2 years old, the old woman replied. And during those years, did you ever question Mr. Lahal and who he was as a person? No, I would never. I know the child like the back of my hand. And there had been no way that someone like Lexus or any other malevolent force could have altered him or changed who he was as a person. That's correct. No further questions, Councilman Shraga. The proceedings went on like that, and Parissa grew more and more incredulous as each witness was brought up. One person claimed to be a cardsmith, even though Parissa had never seen them before in her life, and spewed a bunch of nonsense about how their expertise allowed them to prove, just by looking at someone, whether or not they were using the cards. This witness was, according to his own testimony, which was about as thin as a dead leaf, certain that Taran Lahal was a fake. Another witness stated that she had worked for the king for a stint, and that just before Rune Gildenheart showed up at the palace, a disguise that Taran had used to deal with Parissa's father, the king killed Taran Lahal for not being loyal. Taran mysteriously disappeared, and in his place a stranger dawned in the face of Rune Gildenheart, and then subsequently Taran's. Thankfully, the defense attorney called Parissa to the stand to answer questions, and she was grateful for it. Hopefully, she could talk some sense into the crowd. Councilman Softair, the attorney began, can you please clarify how these cards work? Would someone feasibly be able to be disguised for long periods of time? I'd be glad to elaborate. Parissa sat up on the stand and looked Councilman Shraga directly in the eyes. This would be how she would destroy whatever it was they were cooking up. While we don't fully understand how the cards work, I do know that they only produce specific results in specific circumstances. Someone would be entirely unable to draw the same card over and over and over to disguise themselves. And how would we be able to tell that someone was using a card? The mark appears on the back of their hand when a card is in active use. Sometimes it's quite hard to see, but it is there. Thank you, Councilman Softair. No further questions? I have a few questions. Mr. Newman approached the stand. Proceed. Councilman Shraga seemed to tense a little, as if they were holding their breath. If it is true that a user can't use the same card multiple times in a row, how is it possible for Taran Lahal to remain disguised for several days at a time? Certain cards have rules. In the case of the magician, the card used to disguise yourself, it only lasts for around 12 hours, dusk or dawn to dusk or dusk to dawn. Once it wears off, it has a recharge period, so to speak, but the cards they just know. It's impossible to explain. We don't have concrete answers as to how they work. So, it is correct that someone could reasonably disguise themselves multiple days in a row then without the average citizen knowing. Parissa took a deep breath. He was backing her into a corner. Yes. And is it also true that the cards, because they have ever-shifting rules, as you say, that we could possibly be dealing with one, if not multiple people disguising themselves as Taran Mahal? Based on the rules of the cards, it is a possibility. Yes. However, very few decks of cards exist. Therefore, if the cards do not have concrete rules, is it also possible that the magic could just simply decide to provide its disguise for a longer period? Yes? I honestly don't have an answer to that. I'm not familiar with how the cards work to that extent, so I don't know. Thank you. I have no further questions. When Newman returned to his seat, he licked his lips and then drank a large gulp of water from the glass on his table. Next came the evidence. They presented the most absurd things Parissa had ever seen, including portraits of Taran that had been painted when he was a child. Mr. Newman claimed that the portraits clearly showed birthmarks that were no longer present and differences in hair color. Parissa rolled her eyes. The hair color came down to the painter's preferred tube of paint, and the birthmark was an artistic choice. Any objections? Shraga interjected. Yes, Councilman. Taran's attorney stood. A decade-old painting proves nothing. People change over time. When that painting was made, Taran was not even 13 years old. Also, a lot of what we're seeing is up to artistic interpretation. It's natural, not incriminating. Exactly. Objection overruled. What? Parissa creased her lips. They could not be serious. The day dragged on, and then finally it was done. Parissa, exhausted, wiped sleep from her eyes. Some people had chosen to leave, having seen enough. Taran merely sat, his hands in his lap, the hair on his neck standing on end. People of the jury, we have heard testimonies, examined evidence, and observed the defendant's reactions. It all points to one fact. The man sitting before us as Taran Mahal is not who he claims to be. Using the power of the cards, a magical force that we do not understand, he has likely permanently altered his appearance in order to infiltrate our council. We trust that you will weigh the evidence and reach the just conclusion. Thank you. Mr. Newman sat for the last time, and Parissa let out a sigh of relief. If he spoke again, she was going to throw a brick at him. Councilman Shraga, esteemed council members, members of the jury, the prosecution has tried to convince you that Councilman Lahal is an impostor. But they have failed to present any irrefutable evidence to prove their claims. The changes in appearance, the inconsistencies of memory, these are natural occurrences, not evidence of deceit. We trust you to consider the facts and find Mr. Lahal innocent of these baseless accusations. Thank you. Taran's defense attorney did not sound at all confident in themselves. Parissa had thought Taran's attorney had done a good job, but would it be enough? The jury stood one by one and stepped into a side chamber for deliberation. Esmond let out a lengthy sigh, and Perseus rubbed at his temple. All right, I'm going to take a brief break for ads. Eat some soup. The court stresses me out. I am that cat emote in Twitch. In the Twitch chat, absolutely. Gotta get that Jeff Bezos money. All right, almost there. I love that emote though so much, Raimundo. It's great. I can see how it would be rage baity, though. That is funny. Me posting that in the chat, like, I can't. Watching people argue with each other, that's gold. Pure gold. I love it. All right. The jury stood one by one and stepped into a side chamber for deliberation. Esmond let out a lengthy sigh and Perseus rubbed at his temple. This was an absolute disaster. Parissa shook her head and Terran's attorney spoke softly to him. Parissa knew the case could not stand, but she also knew that apparently one of the council had it out for Terran the Hall. This whole thing had been brought up by the insurrectionists, and Parissa could not help but wonder who had planted such an insidious idea in their heads. Several hours passed, and Parissa nearly fell asleep with her forehead on the table. Finally, the jury all shuffled back in, and an electrical energy shot around the room. That sounds like your opinion, man. Oh my god, I can't. The cat, I love it so much, though. Has the jury reached a verdict? Councilman Shraga asked, a certain satisfaction in their voice. Yes, Councilman. The foreman of the jury stood and cleared their throat. We, the jury, find the defendant, Terran Lahal, guilty of being an imposter. What? Parissa spat out, rising to her feet. That's impossible! The entire room burst out into whispers, murmurs, and then shouts. Order! Councilman Shraga demanded. Order in the court. I hereby sentence Terran Lahal to 6 months of incarceration so we can appropriately monitor him. If he exhibits any signs that he is in fact an imposter, a notice will be posted of his final sentence. 2 elite guards stepped up and jerked Terran's arms behind his back, restraining him with handcuffs. Perseus stood but could do nothing. To go against the court system of Sagano would make him biased, and that would cost him his job. Hold steady, Esmond advised, grabbing Parissa's wrist. Don't make any sudden moves. We must keep our faces up, and we'll figure out what to do. This isn't the worst thing that could happen. If Terran goes, who's next? Me? Perseus? You? Parissa demanded. Keep calm. We'll be fine. Famous last words. Literal famous last words. It's fine. It's fine. Another year. Terran, the prison, December of the first year. Terran tapped his foot against the hard bed underneath him. His forehead rested on his knee. The hours of the afternoon passed, and the lone square of light that shot through the one small square window in his cell hit the wall in a bright, nearly blinding patch. Unlike the palace, the jail near the barracks was made of old stone, and the humidity and moldy must of the place permeated everything. Despite Sagano being in a dry area, underground moisture leaked into everything, and Terran's cell was no exception. A cluster of mosquitoes hovered above a puddle on the floor, water that had seeped in from somewhere, and Terran batted one off his arm, leaving a bright red stain on his skin. He slid off the bed and began to draw in the damp sand and clay. Eventually, the shape of a cake formed, complete with 18 individual candles, and he wrote the words, Happy Birthday, in large letters above it. If he had been counting his days correctly, today he would be 18 years old. And he was alone. So far, the guards assigned to him had found no evidence of card usage. They had taken his cards away from him and hid them somewhere, and the amount of anxiety that it had given him was indescribable. He felt like someone had taken a part of his skin off, or cut his hair and stuffed it in a box. He felt naked, and nothing in the world felt worse. He ran his fingers over the back of his neck and felt the residual bump of silver there, the metal that traced his significator. Shraga had taken that mark, despite dozens of times that Terran had tried to explain it as evidence of a plot. This must be the evidence that the card had become permanent, fusing with his body. They, of course, could not be further from the truth, but no one was there to defend him. He had to push quite a bit of hair out of the way to get to it, and he knew he did not look like himself. That was what the people wanted, right? For him to be some kind of imposter. He knew he did not have any magic in his system. That feeling was impossible to describe. Anyone who had not used the cards before would never understand the rush, the joy that the cards brought. He almost wondered if that was why he felt like he was dying, if the absence of magic was making him sick. I should have brought a real cake. A voice that was not his own ringing through the cell made him jump out of his skin. He scrambled to his feet, stumbling and stepping directly into the mosquito-infested puddle. His cloth shoe soaked with water, and he cried out in disdain. As quickly as he could, while the mosquitoes swarmed his legs and bit him to death, he removed his shoe. He wrung it out as best as he could, and then finally raised his head to look through the bars at whoever spoke to him. Fabian Blackwell stood there beyond his cell. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you so," was all he said. "I overreacted. It's been so quiet here, I wasn't expecting anyone. I was sent down here by the council to conduct some research. We're still trying to figure out if you're an imposter." Taryn huffed out a sigh and sank down onto his bed. "I don't know how many more ways I can tell you that I'm not. You don't have to convince me. They've been telling me I'm an imposter my whole life." Taryn nodded. "I can't imagine having a criminal record helps. It follows me wherever I go. I was a con man once, so I carry that into my political career. All criminals do. I know. What made you want to get here?" "Into the council. It was an accident. My first wife, Dominica, was from Na'a. I helped her first husband secure a large contract with the palace manufacturing weapons. He didn't exactly have the right connections, so I was able to give him a little nudge. I won't ask. Dominica and I became close. Her husband left her. We married, and then she died. I'm sorry to hear that. She had a very serious terminal illness that her first husband couldn't handle. I did my best to help her through it, but in the end, she fell to it like most do." All Taryn could do was nod. He knew better than anyone what it was like to be that familiar with death. "That rocketed me from Daya conman to Na'a businessman faster than I could say, 'I do,' and then I was alone. I still retain my title, which is the incredible thing about status. That attracted a lot of attention, and I met Myrella. She was looking for a plaything to entertain her, and I filled that role. She doesn't pay much attention to me." "Sorry to hear that." "It's all the same to me. I'm glad she leaves me alone. We're happier that way. When I was elected to replace Wolf on the council after you... well, killed him, is that what happened? It's what the cards decided. Your secret's safe with me." Blackwell put his hand over his heart. "After I was elected, I suddenly realized I had a great opportunity. I might be able to make things better in the little ways that I could. Why are you here, Councilman Blackwell? It's as I said, I need to figure out if you're an imposter." "So, are you, Taryn Lahal?" "No." "That's what I thought. Now we just have to prove it. There's no way for me to. They've rigged the whole thing because we don't know how the cards work. They've convinced themselves that no matter what, I'm fake. That we need to figure out how they work. Impossible. There's not enough information on them. Then tell me what you know so I can convince them." A chill ran up Taryn's spine. This entire thing seemed like a terrible idea. "I can't." "Why not?" Blackwell slid his back along the wall to sit mirroring Taryn beyond the bars. "There's a chance that you could use the information for the wrong purposes. It puts everyone at risk. You could take my cards and do something evil." Blackwell nodded, understanding. "Fair assessment. I don't even know where they are. But I don't know that, and there's still a cardsmith in the city. I don't know what resources you have. I wish there was some way that I could prove my intentions to you. If I had my cards, I could." "Do they tell you those kinds of truths?" "Sometimes. I'm surprised that Widow Mag isn't as obsessed with the cards as you are. They must not work for her." Blackwell raised an eyebrow at the statement. "Do they not work for everyone?" "Oh, we got a self-care combo. Everybody sit up, stretch, drink some fluids if you have one. I actually don't have any liquids. Hold on, let me send an SOS to Jace." The cat emotes. Raimundo, you got the best emotes, though. Also, welcome in, Chips. Taryn's in prison now, so things are going well. Really good for him. A+ Taryn Lahal. Remember, if you want to listen or read the rest of the book, the beginning of the book, you can either read free samples on my website or on Twitch and YouTube. The VODs are going to be saved there until the middle of June, so feel free to go back, read the beginning of the book if you're interested, and check it out, by the way. Alright. You have to have a pretty solid belief that they work, otherwise, for whatever reason, they just don't turn on. Talbot, for example, picked them up and they did nothing for him. There are also certain rituals that must be done to prepare your body. Incredible. See, so I couldn't use them without your help. Taryn closed his eyes and felt his stomach flip. He really did not have much of a choice. He had to rely on his own intuition instead of Lexus, the cards, holding his hands. His eyes shifted to Blackwell. Of all the people who could have possibly reached out to him, a con man had to be the one to approach him. Vina had made it clear that she was no longer interested in getting into messes bigger than she could handle, which was understandable given her history. Esmond had always been afraid, and Taryn was sure he had been trying to keep Parissa from blowing her top over the whole thing. Blackwell was very likely the only person he had left. "What do you need to know?" Taryn asked. "Anything I can to convince the majority of the council members that you're not a threat." "Well, firstly, I don't have the mark of the card on my hand." "What about the mark on the back of your neck?" "That's my significator, that's different." "Explain." "It just marks me as a user of the cards." "And how did you get it?" "The king branded me with it." "Can anyone be branded?" "No, you have to find your purpose through vision in the cards first." Blackwell nodded and pulled a notebook from his pocket, jotting things down. "This makes it incredibly unlikely that the king was just recruiting random citizens to impersonate you, right?" "Correct. As far as I'm aware, there are only 3... Taryn had to stop himself. 2 card users in the entire city, myself and Parissa. How many could there be? The decks are incredibly selective, and only a few of those are left. The cardsmith in town doesn't have the resources to make more. He mostly just sells them at this point, or they get passed down among users. Where is his shop? I'm not telling you that. Understood. Is there any way I can verify this information other than it coming out of your mouth? Taryn thought very carefully about his next step. If he was not tactful, this entire thing could blow up in his face. Yes, there are books. Books? In the palace library? No, they were Lexus's. He has them stored away in his headquarters. I won't tell you where they are, but Parissa can go get them for you. Perfect. I'll talk to her about them, and perhaps we can go from there. If I can show the council a physical book, give them evidence of how the cards work, that might be a good place to start. Do you know where they came from originally? No clue. That is one of their greatest mysteries. Taryn smudged out his birthday cake drawing with the one foot that still had a shoe. I wish I knew. Is it your birthday? 18 years old today. Blackwell rested his hand on the bars. I'm so sorry. This must be a terrible birthday present. Perhaps when we prove your innocence, I'll take you out for a drink to celebrate. Then you better get on it. 6 months is a long time. Rip Taryn and his mosquito house. Mosquitoes suck. Literally, they are the worst. That's all I have to say. I have a personal vendetta out against mosquitoes, truly. If you all have any lore questions or anything, let me know. I recognize this is the second book, so I'd be happy to answer questions about any of the characters or the history of the world or any of those things, if you want more information. Deathless. Parissa, Zaya, January of the 2nd year. Stand down! Parissa shouted over the clang of metal on metal and the explosion of gunfire. Another thatch building crackled to life in a blaze that leapt from home to home, stall to stall, business to business, as the entirety of Zaya burnt to the ground. A group of rioters faced Parissa, and a Na'a mercenary with their armor glinting in the glow of the embers raised their chin. Muradah was right, they said. This whole place needs to burn. The mercenary lunged forward with the sharp tip of a blade that glimmered in the eerie light and did not hesitate to attempt to run Parissa through. The blade clipped the armor that protected her chest, and the tip nicked her arm instead. With one rallying cry, everyone in the area made her a target. A bullet whizzed past her head, and she reeled as something slammed into her shoulder. When she whipped her head to the right, she found a rioter there with a chunky piece of wood that they had salvaged from the fire. She did not want to hurt them. Everything she had ever done had been to protect these people. It hurt worse than any wound she had ever sustained to know that these people who she had clothed and fed and protected as best as she could in a corrupt system she had been thrust into would want her dead. She yanked a card out of its pouch as fast as she could, stepping out of the way of another swing from the board, and slammed it onto her hand. The ink spilled across her skin, a dark blue stain that seemed to glitter like starlight, and the magic took hold. The electrical pulse of energy shot across her body, standing her hair on end and causing goose flesh to run up and down her arms. When it was done, nothing seemed to have changed other than a faint glow around her body that she wondered if anyone else could see. When the mercenary jumped to strike again, their blade merely bounced off Parissa's armor as if there were an invisible field there. And Parissa smiled to herself. The cards never let her down. Either luck or magic was on her side, and as she used them more and more, she understood why Taryn had fallen in love with the cards and everything they gave. Someone must have been looking over them. Parissa drew the dagger that Esmond had given her for her birthday many years ago, rolled forward, and slashed the blade across the mercenary's leg, leaving a deep gash as she did so. They hissed out in pain, wheeling around to try and get at her again, but had to dodge out of the way of the rioter with the wooden board instead. As Parissa turned around to face the citizens of Sageno again, the crack of a bullet being fired rang out, and an explosive pain shattered through her left arm. She looked down to find that a single stray bullet had shattered the magical aura around her body, and that the metal had lodged itself into her arm. The rest of the aura held up, but the magic crackled like a spider web where it had been hit. She threw her foot into the knee of the mercenary and brought them to the ground, causing them to drop their weapon. They attempted to drag themselves out of the fight, limping as they did so, bullets flying. The wooden beam bounced off Parissa's armor, and she put her arm above her head to block the blow from hitting her face. In the daze, she swiped at whatever hit her, but her blade cut air. A brick hit the wall behind her as something was thrown in her direction, but it shattered as it missed. Another bullet cracked into Parissa's magic armor, sending a fracture up her leg. In the pain, she cut at the closest adversary again, but stumbled and could not hit her target. How? How was this possible? She had spent a good year of her life training to be the best in combat situations like this, but she recognized that she was used to fighting with a partner. Without Perseus at her side, her vulnerability showed. They were instructed to always go in pairs. On top of that, Perseus was a better shot. He was halfway across the city trying to keep Na'a from burning down. And when they got the message that Zaya had been set ablaze, Parissa said that she could handle it. Perhaps she had been wrong. With one good swipe, she managed to cut open the back of the rioter who swung at her with the board. They cried out as they dropped the wood and backed away from the fight, hoping not to get stabbed again. And then a rock hit her on the side of the head. She reeled at the impact, the aura from the hermit fracturing in front of her eyes, making it impossible for her to see. She closed one eye to try her best to ignore the shattered lines dancing across her vision, and found the mercenary who had thrown the rock. With one swift kick, she knocked them to the ground, unconscious, and another bullet lodged itself into the post of a burning stall next to her, shattering the wood into 1,000 pieces. Turning toward the direction of the bullet, Parissa found one of the Creed of the Ceaseless there with a stolen rifle, taken from one of the guards, no doubt. She charged, blade dripping with the blood of other Segonites, but the acolyte merely stepped away from her blade, realizing she could not see. Bang! Parissa's card shattered. The aura dissipated into shards of light as a bullet lodged itself into her leg, and she tumbled to the ground. Shakily, she raised a hand to prevent the person dripping red in their robes from shooting her directly in the head. "The Overseer has ordered that it all burn," they said. "Don't stand in our way." In one swift motion, something glinted through their torso, accompanied by the sound of shredding and a crunch. Hands trembling, the Creed member dropped their gun, and Parissa squinted through the firelight to see the tip of a sword poking through their chest. Whoever stood behind them ripped the blade out, and the Creed of the Ceaseless follower dropped to their knees and then slumped over, a puddle of blood spreading across the cobblestone as if their robes grew roots. Thank you, Jays. Jays bought me some water.
Yeah.
Guys, the first book was so much espionage, and then this book, shit really just hit the fan. I'm not gonna lie. Everything is so bad right now. Oh, I'm taking another bite of bread. Sleep. Terran. The prison, January of the 2nd year. Terran. Terran rubbed his dirty fists into his eyes, trying to wipe the sleep out of them as he swore someone called his name. Sleep, however, came so fleetingly that it pulled him back in with tender arms. The bench he laid on for the last 2 months was so firm that he could hardly sleep on it, so he had spent many nights staring at the spot that the moonlight cast on the wall, counting the days as best as he could. When sleep finally caught up to him, he collapsed into long stints of slumber that did not break even when the guards shouted at him that they had prepared him food. "Terran, wake up!" Terran grumbled and sat up, not happy that he had been disturbed to find that the sun had already risen well past its midpoint in the sky. How long had he been asleep? After taking a moment to clear grogginess from his head, he turned to find Blackwell outside of his cell, along with Perseus. Perseus had not graced him with his presence for as long as Terran had been confined, so all Terran gave him was a curt nod. He understood Perseus' position. He could not betray the council or he could potentially lose his job. Not only did his mother rely entirely on that job for her own safety, but given the state of things, it could also potentially cost Perseus his life. Daya is burning to the ground, Blackwell curtly stated. What? Terran jumps to his feet, dizzy, clutching to the wall for support. What happened? This new member of the Creed of the Ceaseless has shown himself some sort of overseer. He's effectively waged war on Sagano. Alright, hold on. Let me fix this error here. Okay, there we go. He doesn't have the men. The hell he doesn't, Perseus scoffed. He stormed Daya last night in a surprise attack, armed not only with his own Creed members, but also backed by new Na'a mercenaries. On top of that, whatever he said to the citizens got them all riled up, so half of them burned their own houses down. Oh my god, is your mom all right? Terran pressed his hands against the bars. He wished he could be out there with them, but instead he had been relegated to prisoner, to something easy to forget about. I was able to get her evacuated, but that's not the story for everyone. Hundreds of people are dead. Zaya is still burning, and it doesn't look like we are going to be able to put it out. Stopping stone buildings from burning is one thing, but stopping grass from catching fire is another. Oh, great. Terran rested his head against the bars and closed his eyes. I should be out there. I could probably put the fire out. Perseus shifted his armor, grating a little as he did so, and rested his hand on the hilt of his blade. I sent Parissa to go do that, but she's missing. Terran's head snapped back up to look Perseus in the eye, and even though he looked calm, Terran could see a storm brewing in the way he blinked, and his irises darted back and forth. I've had men searching for her all day, but some bodies are so charred that they can't be identified. At the end of the sentence, Perseus's throat choked. Blackwell held a hand up. We're working on it. Perseus and I need to show you something. From inside his coat, Blackwell revealed Ami's tablet, the device they had shown Terran pictures on before. Where's Ami? Terran demanded. Esmond is keeping a good eye on them, don't worry. They were actually the one who had been messing around with the computer behind the war room. After some digging, they found other files, a map, specifically, of the inside of Sagano's walls. Tunnels lead everywhere, not just to that computer room, and with a little more work they were able to pry codes out of the computer. They're a little brilliant, I will admit. Terran nodded. And? We followed these tunnels to a lot of empty storage rooms, Perseus explained, but also found this. Perseus took the tablet from Blackwell, swiped through what Terran could only assume were images, and then flipped the tablet to show Terran. A dark room illuminated by one eerie red service light housed hundreds of what Terran could only describe as tubes. What are those? When Parissa and I had first opened the computer, we found a letter from Lahale mentioning cryosleep. I still don't really know what it means, but look at this. Another image revealed the inside of the tubes, which had been lined with soft bedding that had not quite worn away from age, including a pillow. A large hatch covered the openings on the tubes, which seemed to Terran to be about the length of an average person. When I say that there were thousands of these in dozens of rooms, I mean it, an entire network of them, Blackwell explained. God, if I had my cards, we would have answers. Ami did their best explaining what they could. Perseus began to pace after he set the tablet down on the table outside of Terran's cell. Apparently, cryosleep is this concept, a made-up thing. It isn't real. It's the idea that if you put a person into a cold environment, we're talking below freezing cold, their heart will slow down, like turning a person into a human ice cube. Why would you even want to do something like that? When done correctly, it's supposed to put you to sleep for a long time? Perseus merely shrugged. But that's the point. It's made up. There's science that backs up some of it, but humans have never been able to fully achieve it. So when Lahale talked about going into cryosleep, he must have been referring to these pods. Blackwell scratched at his chin. The funny thing is, when we investigated further, we found that these pods are only hooked up to what looks like cooling units that blow chilly air. Nothing more. Terran's eyebrows scrunched together and he twinged his face in confusion. They're just beds? As far as we could tell. We even lifted one up and moved it around after prying the bolts off. Perseus shook his head. He lied then. Terran knew that they were so close to solving some sort of puzzle. He just did not know where it would lead. It seems so, but why? We aren't sure. Blackwell picked up the tablet and returned it to his coat. We're having a hearing today on whether or not we should release you from prison, and I'm going to push very sternly that you must be let go. You're one of the best resources that we have. The city can't burn to the ground. Thank you. I appreciate it. We need to find Parissa. I'll keep you updated. Perseus sighed. I'm sure she's fine. She's fine. She just got shot. It's cool. It's fine. It's okay. Totally fine. Okay, hold on 1 second. 1 second. I recognize my cat may punch this door, but my husband is doing dishes out there, and it's very clickety-clackety. We may have to deal with my cat trying to break in, but it'll be okay. Awake. Parissa. Question mark? January of the second year. Like a pick through her eye, a radiating pain burning from the right side of her head across her temple throbbed. Parissa gingerly put her hand to her head, wincing as the tender spot shot a pain through the side of her face. Someone pulled her arm away. Someone warm. When her eyes fluttered open, even the orange light from some kind of flame was too much for her to handle, and she hissed at it, the brightness burning her retinas. Easy, someone said, a gravelly voice she did not recognize. You had a pretty serious head injury, so you shouldn't make any sudden moves. Parissa rested her hands over her eyes, blocking some of the light, and let out a deep, exhausted sigh. What happened? I saw you getting jumped by a good group of insurrectionists and felt like you needed the help. Good thing, too. I didn't realize who you were until after I gutted the guy who tried to shoot you in the head. A whirlwind of imagery sparked through Parissa's mind as she remembered the feeling of the barrel against her brow. The realization that she had been that close to being dead shuddered through her body, and her hands trembled a little. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I need to make sure you live first, and then after that we need to make sure you don't die to the mob outside. Where are we? A little place I like to hide out. Everything's falling apart out there, though. Not many places on the street left that are safe. Do you know what happened? To start the riots? Word is there's a new leader of the Creed of the Ceaseless and that he's out for blood. The widow's gone missing and he's taken her place. The person moved around the room, shuffling objects that Parissa could not see, and he eventually pulled back a chair, wooden legs scraping across a wooden floor. Apparently he found a weak point because he drove a spear right into it. Too many guards were busy handling the situation in Na'a, and not enough of them could get to Daya in time. The whole place was effectively tinder anyway, so it was easy to unleash their pack of dogs to burn the place down. They're killing people. Seems like they don't care. It's like a bunch of angry wasps in a box out there, and someone shook it up. Parissa growled and rolled over onto her side as the pain in her head subsided a little bit, soft sheets brushing against her cheek. There was a better way. He didn't have to burn people's houses down. Perhaps he thought that if he didn't do something, the council would never let people leave. Shraga is making damn sure everyone thinks it's better inside this cage than outside of it. Uh-huh. Look, I'm not saying the Creed's right. I'm just that they may feel justified in what they're doing. I guess the point is that we're all screwed no matter which way you look at it. The chair creaked as the stranger leaned back in it. The council wants to keep people locked up so the city keeps functioning as it has for the last 100 years. The people were growing restless and were already unhappy with the transfer of power to Terran Mahal, and the Creed, who essentially keep their heads down for the decade they've been around, are now spewing fire. What do you know about them, the Creed? Parissa winced as she moved her face wrong. To be honest, not much. I keep my ear to the ground as much as possible, but they tend to keep it to themselves. They started gathering members when I was coming up, but I had my own life to deal with. I didn't really want to get involved with a cult. Parissa blinked her eyes open just a little to try and get a lay of the room. Through the gaps between her fingers, she found that the room was no bigger than a closet. A single bed had been shoved against the wall, though the sheets were surprisingly nice given the state of the room. Parissa brushed her fingers against the wall, finding cold stone there. And what are you involved with exactly? Me, the stranger scoffed. All right, I'm going to take a break for ads. Ad Town's the worst, but that's okay. It gives me an excuse to eat some soup. My soup is actually cold, so I'm going to finish the soup after we get done streaming because cold broccoli cheese soup is kind of bad, not gonna lie. Not gonna lie. Cold soup kind of gross. Cold cheese soup bad. Ew. Oof. All right, cool. We're back. Not a fan of the council? Not a fan of anyone. The council abandons the weak and those in need. The citizens have their heads too far in the sand to really achieve any kind of justice, and the creed is a ticking time bomb. After the throbbing had mostly subsided, Parissa pulled her hand fully away from her face to look at who sat across from her. Someone she did not recognize, an older man with a spattering of gray streaked through his beard at the corners of his mouth. His long hair had been braided and pulled behind his head. Average in every way is how Parissa would have described him. If he stepped into a crowd, he would just disappear. Do you have a name? Ajax. Pleasure to meet you, Parissa. Councilman Sovter, I should say. Parissa scoffed and shook her head. I don't even know if I want to be associated with them anymore. Wise decision. Seems they can't really agree on anything, so they're just slowing everyone down. Why did you save me? I don't like seeing folks get shot in the head. He posited the statement like a question, as if valuing human life was a surprise. But on top of that, you've got an interesting story. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to stay alive, so if I can find people that will help me do that, the better off I'll be. And what exactly do you need me for? Ajax shrugged. Not sure yet, but I didn't want to let you die. And besides, I need your answers. Answers about what? These. Ajax held up something in his hand, though she had to squint a little in the dim light to be able to see it better. When she realized what it was, she gasped. Between his fingers, Ajax held a set of cards, though Parissa could not place who they belonged to. Terran's did not have the same pattern on the back, and hers were in her pocket. The kings had been destroyed. Not to say, of course, that the ones Ajax held had not been tampered with. The deck had a massive hole punched through them, and the surface of each card was stained with some foreign fluid that had nearly turned the cards black. When Parissa did not ask any questions in her shock, Ajax continued, In my travels around the city, I have become familiar with the jeweler that sells his wares above the king's old tavern. I never worked for him, but I worked for people who worked with him. The jeweler himself may or may not fence certain stolen goods under the right circumstances, and I became aware that he also sold these types of goods for a high price. What happened to the jeweler? Oh, that guy's dead, and whoever did it destroyed every last deck that he had. Parissa put her hand over her mouth. But why? I was hoping you'd tell me. Parissa shook her head and shrugged. I don't know anyone who would even care to destroy them. Very few people know where they are even sold. And the fact that someone sought him out, killed him, and then destroyed the cards is unprecedented. The king would have never let it happen. Yeah, well, he's dead too. Not much we can do about things. All it means is that we need to protect the cards we have. We absolutely cannot let anyone else get their hands on my cards, or Terran's for that matter. Very clearly, they don't like us having the power we have. You and Terran Lahal have been making quite the scene around the city, stopping buildings from falling over and all that. Your power is intimidating, to put it lightly. It's understandable why someone would want to strip that away from you. And furthermore, make sure no one else could have it. Do you think it could be the Creed? Potentially, though someone must have leaked the information to the Overseer, if that were the case. Parissa's mind flicked to a man with red hair and white robes, someone who was not the king. The mercenary who had come with them on the expedition outside the walls. He had said he worked with the king at one point, and Parissa knew for a fact, or was as certain as she could be, that the king's forces were loyal to him and him alone. At least she could hope that they were. Either way, Ajax shrugged, you're a dying breed. I'd say watch your back, but you already almost got sent to the next life by a peasant with a pitchfork. You're welcome. Thanks. I appreciate it, I guess. Parissa slowly rose to sit up on the bed, arms wobbly and sense of direction distorted from her injury. After she seemed like she had stabilized herself a little, Ajax handed her a glass of water, ice cold, in her hand. and she drank it slowly. Once the glass had been drained entirely, she met eyes with him. Here's how this is going to go. If you want to help, you're going to do everything I say. He raised a challenging eyebrow. And why is that? There are a lot of things that are going on that you are not privy to, and I need to make sure that everyone is on board if you want to fight with us. I can get Taryn Lahal out of prison. Is that so? He gazed at her, unconcerned, as if the matter was as easy as playing catch. I've been in and out of that prison. I know it like the back of my hand. And with the way that the guard is stretched so thin with the riots that are happening, no one will even know that he's gone. What's in it for you? I get out of this rat trap. Potentially, some of my old enemies die in the process, and everyone gets the justice they deserve. Parissa took a moment to consider. She knew that they needed as much help as they could possibly get, and she did not know who she could trust. If you can get Taryn out of prison, we can all have a meeting and decide what to do from there. Taryn is going to want to know your skills and what you bring to the table, and I want Perseus to be able to run your records. Ooh, sweetheart, you might not want to do that. I'm not saying your status makes you a threat. It may make you an asset, but if you're going to murder me in my sleep, I'd rather get shot during a riot defending people I love. A quiet knock bounced off the door, and Parissa jumped, still ready to fight. Ajax held his hand up to calm her and asked, Yes? I brought the supplies you asked for, Ajax. I can come in and help if you like. Ah, Reed, thank you. Perfect timing. Come on in. A tall, square individual entered, a large bag slung over their shoulder and a smile on their face. Parissa raised her eyebrows at the red robes that covered their body, and when they sat on a chair, it creaked under their weight. They looked like they could snap a tree in half, but none of the hard lines of someone primed for violence graced their face. This is Reed, Ajax added. They're a good friend of mine and can help patch you up. You were bleeding everywhere, and I did as best as I could with the bandages that I had. Reed is a much better doctor than I and can help stitch up things I couldn't. Parissa looked between the two strangers, a chill running up her spine. After she said nothing, Ajax huffed. I mean, you could also just sit there with old cotton over your wounds and risk getting an infection. I understand your trust issues, though. From what I hear, you've been through a lot. Trusting people was already hard enough, and it's only gotten worse. You don't have to trust me, Reed said. Just allow me to help you for a moment, and then you never have to deal with me again. We all have the same goals, my dear, Ajax says as he pulled a thin cigar from a pouch, lighting it and filling the room with the smell of burning tobacco. In the end, we're just trying to survive, and while this sandstorm kicks up, we might as well survive together. I love Ajax so much, though. I'll have to tell Ajax in our server that there's a character also named Ajax. That was totally an accident. I met Ajax after writing this book. Cryo, Taryn, the prison, January of the second year. I'm so sorry, Taryn. Perseus spoke, his voice soft to break the pain of the words. He held out a deck of cards in his hands, and Taryn ran his fingers across them through the bars. Their surface had been totally marred by the fluid that had leaked out from inside them just as before, when the king's cards had been stabbed by Talbot. Though different in color, the mystical shimmering goo clung to the cards in places still, and the chalkiness of it turned this particular set white. Though thankfully not Taryn's deck of cards, seeing the deck like that still made him sick. Part of it was the memory of watching Lexus die, but something else crept into the back of Taryn's mind. His heart sank like a stone as another important part of the king had been destroyed. Lexus would have been devastated to know that yet another deck had been damaged beyond repair. What happened? Taryn demanded. Perseus sighed and set the deck down onto the table by Taryn's cell. I got a report by my men that someone had broken into the jewelers above the King's Tavern. The entire place was ransacked like a bomb went off in there. As if that wasn't already bad enough while the city's practically on fire. I went in to see what happened and found the owner there, stabbed to death. Didn't even see it coming. From what my crime team can tell me, someone jumped him, hit him over the head, and then ended his life quickly. Trained. Precise. Then they tore through the place looking for something. The cards? I can only assume. The safe where these were kept had been pried open and every single deck had been thoroughly run through. They really wanted to make sure there wasn't a single card left that wasn't usable. Do we have any suspects? No one saw anybody go in or out. It most likely happened at night, and we did find a window that had been breached. Someone must have been planning this for some time, and now these destroyed cards are all that's left of the place. They didn't touch a single piece of jewelry, so it wasn't a standard robbery. Taryn shook his head and sank to the floor. Then with a start, his heart jumped into his throat as fear gripped him. He lunged at the bars, his face pale as a sheet. "Perseus, where are my cards? I have them somewhere secure. I won't say because..." He closed his eyes in regret. Maybe betrayal. Taryn could only guess. Well, now I don't know who to trust. Whoever did this hated the king, or maybe really hates you. Footsteps thumped as someone descended the old wooden stairs into the jail. Blackwell stepped into the light of the square window of Taryn's cell, flanked by 2 elite guards. "Taryn, we need you upstairs." "Oh, finally!" Taryn stood and brushed dirt from his pants. "I thought you'd never ask. Will I have time to change? I could really use a shower." The bars to Taryn's cell opened with a clang, but an elite guard yanked Taryn from the cell by his elbow and very quickly slammed handcuffs onto his wrists. "Come with me," they commanded. "Sorry, you're not out of it yet." Blackwell sighed. "I tried. Taryn, I really did. They think that by holding you here, eventually you'll break. I couldn't get enough votes." Taryn laughed to himself, a barking, sarcastic laugh. "Of course you couldn't." Something about this whole thing made Taryn terribly uneasy, and he could feel conspiracy brewing. He knew that things were not going to be fixed as soon as he took power, and he thought back on the moment that he had decided to abolish his position as sovereign. It probably was one of the worst decisions he could have ever made, and he was sure that the moment the resolution was signed into law, the other council members around him had begun to plot his downfall. At least he had tried. The elite guards led him up the stairs, across the yard, back toward the palace, and finally inside, where the ascent to the council room began. Blackwell and Perseus said nothing as the elevator hummed and took them upward, and Taryn ran his tongue over his teeth. It was going to be a long day. The council room doors opened to reveal the members there, and Shraga stood as Taryn entered. "Oh, still holding out, I see," they said with the smallest lilt in their voice. "As I said, I'm not an imposter, and it doesn't matter how long you keep me in there, nothing is going to change." Taryn attempted to hold back contempt on his tongue. He had tried to be a diplomat. The king had always been so headstrong, so eager to mouth off to authority and make his opinion known, and while Taryn had respected that, he wanted to be someone who could bridge both sides. He had seen firsthand what divisiveness did if left unchecked, and he had hoped that some peace and fairness would shape the future of Sagano into something brighter. He should have anticipated that unlodging the toxic thinking of those around him would be harder than pulling nails from wood with his fingertips. But he had been hopeful. A mistake. As Taryn's eyes scanned the room, he paused at Paris's seat. Empty. "Parissa still isn't back?" he asked. "You're not allowed to ask questions," Shraga snapped. "Where's Ami? Back where they belong. Outside, where they can't meddle with our affairs anymore." Shraga tapped their fingers on the table. "That's really what this matter is about, so I'd like to focus on the matter at hand. Which is, you have a lot of mouth for someone who's imprisoned. Watch your tongue." Shraga paused to see if Taryn would decide to press them any further before continuing. "Before Ami was returned to the outside, we found out that they were snooping around in databases without anyone's permission. Now wait," Blackwell interjected. "That's not correct. Don't twist things, Shraga. I respect what you have to say, but I've already said that I was closely monitoring what they were doing." Shraga shot Blackwell a look that could pierce steel. "I need not remind you that you as well are going against procedure. You did not clear any of this with us before digging into things. When exactly were you going to reveal to us your findings, Councilman Blackwell, or were you going to wait until it was most beneficial for you to do so? That seems on record for you, given your history." Blackwell's eye twitched, and Esmond raised his hand. "If I may," Esmond mumbled, his voice trembling, "bickering does us no good. You called Taryn here for a reason, so we should stick to the task at hand. The sooner we can solve what's going on and calm the people, the better. We need you to explain this." Shraga pushed papers toward the center of the table, though Taryn could not read them from where he stood. "Ami and Councilman Blackwell have revealed to us that while digging through the databases inside the walls of the city, they have continued to come across concerning documents regarding the history of this place. We were hoping you could provide us some clarity." Councilman Blackwell passed the paper to Taryn, who bent over to look at where it sat. He rotated his wrists in his handcuffs, which pinched and likely bruised him. How absolutely degrading. 2. Mr. Ross Lycus, Head of Security, Sagano Project. "Dear Mr. Lycus, as we stand on the precipice of the most ambitious project of our time, I wish to detail to you, in strict confidence, the forthcoming proceedings of the Sagano Project.
Our participants, now totaling nearly 800 individuals of a variety of talents and uses, are under the belief that they shall be placed into our state-of-the-art cryo chambers, designed to keep them in a stasis and shield them from an impending nuclear war. Their trust in our mission and the perception of an external threat is imperative for the first phase. Once they are safely secured inside, our cooling systems, really just security theater designed by our chief engineer, will make the environment within the chambers exceptionally cold, stimulating the conditions of cryosleep. A potent sedative will then be administered, ensuring they slip into a deep slumber, unaware of the world outside their pods. During this period of induced sleep, the construction crews inside Sagano will undertake the final stages of building completion, from raising walls to delineating distinct districts. It is imperative that our environment is set down to the last brick before our participants awaken. Comprehensive security measures will be implemented, guaranteeing no exit routes to the world outside and thereby preserving the authenticity of the simulated environment. I trust you are prepared. Your security teams will be responsible for closely monitoring all activities via the recently installed CCTV systems. You are, as discussed, allowed to deal with anyone trying to leave with extreme prejudice. When the time comes for our participants to emerge from their cryosleep, they will be told of the fabricated Great War that has ravaged the surface world. We have already destroyed all books, texts, and other documents I believe are damaging to the experiment, and only kept ones, whether false or otherwise, that will reinforce this narrative. Our story will be that they, ensconced safely within our fortified haven, represent possibly the last of humanity. The true nature of the Sagano experiment is, as you are aware, to observe and demonstrate that the social engineering initiatives being pursued by the government, which aim at integrating various classes and types of people, are not only flawed, but catastrophic in nature. Sagano will act as a microcosm to prove that only by maintaining a clear, rigid societal hierarchy can any civilization hope to flourish. Your unwavering dedication to this project has not gone unnoticed, Mr. Lycus. I am also honored that your son Harry has decided to join us on the inside. He'll be reassigned a name, and your legacy will live on inside Sagano's walls. As we forge ahead, I wish to express my gratitude for your steadfast commitment. Finally, it is with mixed emotions that I inform you of my decision to also enter the Sagano experiment alongside our participants. I have no desire to continue to mingle with the outside world, and this will ensure that the authenticity of the simulation remains uncompromised. Our interactions, henceforth, shall be limited to those in cases of emergency only, though I hope that those will be very few, if not at all. Yours in trust and anticipation, Dr. Christian LaHale, Director, Sagano Project. Taryn had to read the letter several times over. It had been hand-transcribed, likely from the computer to the paper before him, and he shook his head when he was done. He had never read something so absolutely abhorrent in his life. The situation only continued to get worse, and when he finally looked up at the room, Shraga raised an eyebrow in anticipation. "Well?" they pressed. "I feel like this document is relatively straightforward," Taryn sighed. "What is unclear?" "Just what does it mean?" Esmond asked. "Well, The doors to the council room burst open, and Taryn whipped his head over his shoulder to see who had entered before being jammed sharply in the back by the guard that held him. It was Parissa's voice that rang across the room. "It means," she asserted as she took her seat, "that we are royally screwed." "Language, my dear," Esmond muttered. "No, Esmond, I'm not holding my tongue." "Well, look who finally decided to show up," Shraga jeered. "Nice of you to join us." Parissa laughed and rocked back in her chair. "It's fine. Not like I almost died in a riot, but thank you for your concern." Taryn felt Perseus stiffen next to him. It took every fiber of control in his body to maintain some semblance of composure, and his hand curled into a fist at his side. "We have to tell the people," was all Parissa said. "And tell them what?" "Exactly," Shraga spat. "That they're doomed? No, we tell them the truth." Taryn looked down at the paper again. In the beginning, the original residents of Sagano were clearly deceived. They thought that they were running from something that didn't exist, that something was coming to get them. That's what the people in the streets believe, too. They think that something beyond the wall is going to wipe us out, which clearly isn't the case. I demand that the people be informed. It's the least we can do for them. They will burn Sagano to the ground. Shraga had to use every ounce of energy that they had to refrain from shouting through gritted teeth. "Haven't you noticed?" Parissa replied with an equal amount of venom. "They already are, and you're stoking the flames. The residents of New Na'a," Parissa put the phrase in air quotes, think that everyone is out to get them, and it's partially because of how you have goaded them on. I will not stand for accusations on this floor. Parissa, please, Esmond pleaded. Release Terran, Parissa demanded. Return him to his cards, and let's put it to a vote. He is not a traitor. Shraga pointed an accusatory finger. We should have never let a child onto the council. I am a legal adult and you know it, but I don't think it would matter to you either way. Well, Parissa addressed the room this time. Let's vote. Do we release Terran Lahal? Who votes in favor of releasing Terran Lahal? Shraga repeated. Raise your hand. The first person to put her hand in the air was Parissa, and she shot it up with confidence. Alvina followed, and then Esmond shortly after. When Terran felt someone shift to his right, he looked to find Blackwell with his hand in the air as well. He made eye contact with his wife, who kept her hand firmly planted at her side. Others cast their votes. All eyes in the room fell on Perseus, the tiebreaker. His hand trembled, and he closed his eyes. Parissa looked at him, her face pleading for him to do something, anything. Terran knew that he and Perseus were not the best of friends, but he hoped that Perseus would see that everything in this situation was wrong. Perseus tended to vote out of fear, often choosing the safest and least confrontational route. But in this case, his vote could mean the difference between dictatorship and freedom. After a painstakingly long moment of contemplation, Perseus raised his hand. I see, was all Shraga said. In that case, since you all are so eager to have him freed, I'm going to, as the chairperson of the judicial branch of Sagano, declare a state of emergency. I will not have traitors on our council, so I am going to invoke Article 3 of the Secondite Insurrection Act to expel potential insurrectionists from the council. As we no longer have a sovereign, it is my duty as the holder of this role to make sure the justice system of Sagano is upheld. This isn't justice! Parissa shouted. You're abusing your power. You are too biased and too young. You no longer are fit to serve the council, and I am formally expelling you from it. Tyron Blackwell, you are also expelled for going behind the backs of the council and conspiring with a potential traitor. This is outrageous. Blackwell lunged forward to say his piece, but one of the elite guards that had escorted Terran hit him hard with the butt of his rifle to keep him in line. Within moments, he too was cuffed. Stand down, the guard barked. Councilman Shraga, is this really necessary? Esmond interjected. Would you like to join them? Shraga offered. There's room. Esmond froze, recognizing the trap he had been caught in, and his jaw hung open in fear. Lock them up in holding until we can figure out what to do with them, Commander. Perseus looked between Terran, Parissa, and Blackwell. Please, Terran whispered. Parissa stood with purpose. Stop her! Shraga yelled. Parissa slammed a card onto the back of her hand. A glimmering suit of armor dripped across her body like spilled ink, and spiraling horns grew from her head like a ram that Terran had seen illustrated in his books. She drew her dagger and barked at Perseus. Terran's cards! Now! Perseus, as though he had a bolt of electricity jump through him, spun on his heels and dashed out of the room. The Emperor. Terran remembered that same power had coursed through his veins when he had ordered Talbot to march into the desert to die. The room burst into chaos. Council members who could not defend themselves dove under tables, and the elite guards who had been dealing with Blackwell and Terran abandoned the two, still handcuffed, to go and deal with Parissa. In one swift movement, Parissa dashed across the room and with unprecedented strength drove her dagger into the torso of the guard she faced. He did not even have time to pull his rifle out, and within seconds stumbled back, holding a gaping wound. He pathetically flailed his arm, attempting to swing at her with the sword he kept at his side, but did not get anywhere near her. A bullet whizzed past her head, and Terran cried out, Parissa, duck! We need to get these damned cuffs off! Blackwell shouted. Parissa charged at the guard who had tried to shoot her, but her dagger hit in just the wrong spot and bounced off his breastplate. He swung at her face with the back end of his rifle, and she slid under it to try and get behind him. She nearly kicked Blackwell as she did so. He scrambled out of the way as best as he could in such a small space. While holding his own bleeding wound, the other guard managed to fire at Parissa while she caused chaos, planting a bullet firmly in her shoulder where her magical armor did not protect her. It did not seem to faze her, And truly, with the strength of an enraged animal, she came down on them again and again. As she grew angrier, her attacks grew more reckless and more bullets lodged their way into her magical shell. The three of them danced around each other as a few of the council members were able to flee the room, hoping not to get shot at. Bullets pierced the glass and shattered windows, explosive rainbows of light that twinkled as they flew. Parissa thrust her dagger into the downed guard's body one final time, and he collapsed to the floor, his blood spilling out across the white marble. For a moment, as Terran watched the blood puddle slide his direction, he found himself transported to another time. A time in which he had watched his parents' blood splatter across the white walls in the exact same way, only a few floors above him. Blackwell screamed something at him, but he was so lost in thought he could not hear it. He turned his head to try and hear better, and eventually noise came through. "Terran! Terran, get the key off the guard!" "Oh," Terran stammered. "Right." He turned as best as he could, and while the guard lay on the ground beside him, he stepped in the puddle of blood to flip him over. After a little bit of a struggle, his fingers found their way into the pouch at the guard's side where the key sat securely at the bottom. "I'll turn around, see if you can unlock my handcuffs," Blackwell ordered, "and then I'll get yours." The other guard stumbled as Parissa bore down on him, rage in her eyes. Terran had never seen her so angry. Terran fumbled and dropped the keys onto the floor. "It's all right," Blackwell reassured. "Stay focused." Terran leaned back and picked up the keys again, his hands trembling. The guard smashed Parissa in the head with his rifle, and she tumbled backward into the table, losing her balance. She cried out, and Terran managed to get the key into the lock on Blackwell's handcuffs. He turned it as quickly as he was able, and Blackwell yanked the handcuffs from his wrists. Soon, Terran had been spun around, and his own handcuffs hit the floor. The other guard fell at Parissa's dagger, and she grabbed Terran's hand, pulling him out of the room. "Guards!" Shraga shouted. "Murderers! Quickly!" The two of them flew toward the stairs, Blackwell shortly behind them, and when they arrived at the bottom, they found Perseus in the throne room, Terran's cards in his hands. He tossed the pouch to Terran, who caught it with ease. By the time they had dashed their way through Na'a, the guards had given up their pursuit, though Terran knew very well that they would be combing the city for them now, every waking moment. The four of them scrambled their way into the king's tavern and gasped for air, catching their breath. Blackwell wiped sweat from his forehead and leaned on a table, his legs shaking. "You could have mentioned that you were going to execute guards." "Sorry, Parissa stammered. I didn't know what else to do. It was them or me." The card faded, and her horns flaked away from her body into a burst of light like little embers from a fire, until she was just herself again. She cried out in pain and stumbled to her knees as the adrenaline wore off, her shoulder bleeding where the bullet had dug itself in. "Seriously, I leave you alone for 5 minutes and you actually get shot?" Someone spat. Terran looked up to meet the face of a stranger, one with dark hair, who rushed to Parissa's side and lifted her from the ground. "Reed!" they cried. "Hurry, she's bleeding pretty bad." The stranger took Parissa back behind a bar, and Terran called to the bartender, "Open up Lexus's room." The bartender did as he was asked, and Parissa was placed onto Terran's old bed, staining the light sheets red from her wound. A tall Creed member rushed to her side, prepared with medical tools and an air of expertise, and began the long process of pulling the bullet from her. "God," Perseus muttered under his breath. "God, what am I going to do?" "We abandoned that ship already, my boy," Blackwell sighed, sinking into a wooden chair. "This whole thing has gone up in smoke. The only safe way out now is through." All right, and on that note, I'm going to go ahead and stop here, since we're going to go into Adtown. And I don't want to be in Adtown anymore. I'm going to go eat soup. My throat is crispy. So again, if you like this book and you're listening to the VOD, thank you so much for hanging out. Also, for all of the new people who popped into the stream, Raimundo, I really appreciate it. Also from earlier today, thanks so much to Lear the Witch for a 37-month sub. And to all the people who've subscribed over on YouTube as well. If you enjoy my work, please check out my website. A lot of my books are free. I have a couple free titles, and I'm always looking for reviews as an indie author. It's rough out there. A lot of my books are award-winning books, readers' favorite award winners, or one of mine was a Waddy's 2022 finalist. I have the first book, Court of Snakes, This Desert Cage, is in Spiffbo right now, which is this self-published fantasy blog-off contest. So hopefully that'll go through. And again, If you want to support my project over on BackerKit, I would really appreciate it. This is going to be my last project here in the US before I move to Canada. And you can read more about the story, more about the BackerKit campaign, what we're trying to do with it. Effectively, this is just a pre-order for this book if it's something that you like and you want to order. If you can, share it with friends. I always need the help. It is tough being an indie author out here. So if you liked this stream, hopefully I'll see you in another one. Tomorrow we're going to be working on some writing, so feel free to swing by in the morning and join us as we write a lovely novella. And it's a adult fantasy folklore novella, so pretty fun. So thank you again, everyone. I will see you all later on, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening. Bye-bye.